at the Bank of England for us now. So, Ed, as expected, the Bank of England putting the interest rate up by 0.25%. And interesting what else they've had to say about the economy.
Yes, it's the 12th successive increase in interest rates from the Bank of England. We've never seen quite such a kind of successive set of increases as since the bank was made independent in 1997. But this is also partly you get what their decision is on interest rates, but you also get a sense of what they think is going on with the economy, because they also every quarter announce what is known as their monetary policy report. They look at the state of the economy and say, well, how's it doing? So we're also getting a sense of just how they think things are looking. And here, you know, there is actually some quite good news. They talk about upgrading their growth forecast by the biggest amount that they have ever done in the history of the Monetary Policy Committee. Now, it's worth just saying they were pretty miserable beforehand. They were talking about the longest recession that we'd seen in modern history. Now they're talking about what might be considered to be kind of more or less flatlining growth. So marginally positive. They're not expecting to see any contraction this year, and that's basically what a recession is, when the economy is shrinking. So that's good news. The kind of thing to note is that it's not bringing us into kind of the feel-good factor. We're not going to see growth that is anything like what it has been in previous booms. They're talking about growth of below 1%, both this year, next year, and the year after. So it's not necessarily something to celebrate, except it's not as bad as it. And at the same time, they're talking about inflation being slightly higher than previously expected. And that higher inflation means there is slightly more pressure on the Bank of England to act. When the bank is doing what it's doing, it's trying to kind of raise interest rates, change interest rates to try and bring inflation more under control. And inflation is considerably higher than it previously thought. You'll have seen recently inflation still above 10%. Well, it does expect it to get down to around 5% by the end of the year. As Ian was saying just a moment ago, the Prime Minister does have that target, doesn't he, to try to halve inflation by the end of this year. This, according to the bank, means he might just about make it. Looking at their kind of what's coming out of their models, he should just make it, but it's going to be much, much tighter than previously expected. I think the final thing to note is that, you know, we are living at the moment through a cost of living crisis, the likes of which we really haven't seen in living memory. And what the bank is kind of contributing to that is partly trying to bring down inflation. But in order to do that, it is raising interest rates. So now up to 4.5%. Those interest rates take quite a while to filter through into our pockets. And you know, if you have a mortgage, it's up to when you're refixing that mortgage that you're going to start to feel that pain. And according to the Bank of England, only about a third of that. So they put rates up. It takes a while before those households around the country need to refix their mortgages, and obviously suddenly you go up from maybe it was kind of 1% up to 4% or even higher. That's taking a while to come through, and only, according to the bank, only about a third of the pain from those rising interest rates has yet been felt. So there is still a lot of pain, 2/3 of that pain yet to come. So there is a bit of, you know, it's not necessarily going to make the feeling of the cost of living crisis go away. For many families, particularly around the country, particularly those who don't necessarily have the savings built up from the pandemic, particularly those who are on mortgages at the moment, it's going to be quite tough over the course of the next few months. But the bank does say the big picture for the economy is considerably less bad than it was before. They're not talking about a recession. They're very happy that energy prices aren't quite as high as they were previously. And they say that things certainly don't look as bad as they were last time they looked at the numbers. So that is at least something to take solace in.
Well, yes, so some positives there, Ed. But as you say, the interest rate has been raised. Have they given any hints about whether that's the last one?
Well, every time the bank raises interest rates, they announce the decision. You get kind of the determination about how many people on the Monetary Policy Committee, because it's essentially in that building there is a policy committee of 9 people that meets to decide these things. This time around it was a 7-2 vote, so they vote on it and we get the minutes. And then alongside the minutes, you get a few paragraphs that kind of provide a little bit of a hint about what they might do in future. And in this case, I suppose the main point is that those paragraphs were kind of the same as they were before. And previously, they were saying basically, if things kind of carry on as we expect them to carry on, then we probably shouldn't need to raise rates further than the market currently expects. And the market currently expects rates to go up one more time. So what we could be looking at right now is we're very close to the peak. It could well be that there's an extra increase. But of course, you never know. And it's worth just bearing in mind that one of the things that the bank has talked about today is the fact that it's been taken by surprise, taken aback by how fast food inflation is going up at the moment. They just didn't expect food prices to go up so high. And we all know, again, we are paying those prices. We're seeing that in the supermarket every day. Well, the bank's looking at them and saying, oh, well, maybe they are going up a bit higher than we expected, a bit faster than we expected, and they might be going up a bit faster next year as well. So all of those things would actually, all else equal, put a bit more pressure on the bank to raise interest rates. But as I say, most people in the markets think maybe one more increase, so you're getting to 4.75%. The thing to note, though, OK, is that that might sound low in historic comparison. OK, look back through history and there were periods where interest rates were up at like 10%, double digits, even above that. However, in those periods, the level of debt that many people had around the economy, mortgage people, those who had mortgages and so on, was smaller than it was. It was smaller than it is now. So higher debt, the fact that we are slightly less able, less equipped with higher incomes to be able to pay that debt means the squeeze that you face from every one small increase in interest rates is much greater now than it was before. So even though it's 4%, even though it's 4.25%, even though it's 4.5%, as it has just gone up to today, that still has a bearing on many households and what they're paying for their mortgages that is similar to what you saw in the 1980s and getting up towards the 1990s. So this is still important stuff, and it's still very painful for many households indeed.